Welcome to Unmasking the Mic. My name is Ralph Anthony, current stand-up comedian and actor living in New York City. Each week I'll be sitting down with a fellow comedian to discuss how they navigate the world and how being in therapy helps aid them in that journey. Thanks for tuning in. Now let the unmasking begin. Welcome back to another episode of Unmasking the Mic. I am your host, Ralph Anthony, and today my guest has been featured in the Women in Comedy Festival. She is New York City-based comedian Kristin Seltman. Thank you for coming on today, Kristin. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you?
You know, thank you for asking. No one ever asks how I'm doing, so I am doing very well. I deleted the Citizens app.
Oh, I love Citizens app. Oh man, my favorite thing to do, I actually did it today, is sometimes the things that are wild, so I like to post them and make jokes out of them. Like today, it's like 2 men are fighting in Bryant Park, and I was like, guys, I'm taking it, calm down. Because some things got crazy, like, I think it was like, someone was like woman with sword at McDonald's, like, sometimes they're like hilarious, but yeah, it gets a little scary too.
Yeah, no, I think the stories are great. Some of the stuff that people fight and argue about, you're like, this can't be real. Like this, there was one, I saw one where it said 2 women arrested for throwing rotting milk at police officers.
So gross.
I mean, I feel like they should have been given an award instead of been arrested, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, but rotten milk is just, that's gross.
Yeah. Terrible.
I'd rather have like someone throw a handful of spiders at me, I think.
Yeah.
Although I don't think I'd like that either. I'm going to go with none. I'm going to choose none.
None. Yes. Yeah. I'll take C. None of the above.
Right.
But it just
fear factor.
Right? Yeah. Sorry. No Joe Rogan. I will not get in this bucket of spiders. Thank you very much. No, we're all set.
Right.
But it just, outside of the fun stuff that you would see, the funny stuff, I should say, it just got to be too much. I was tired of getting these updates. It would stress me the fuck out. With everything going on. And my therapist was like, what are you doing to get away from all of the news? And I go, I'm knee deep. I'm swimming in the deep end of the news every day. Like, it would, like, 2 or 3 hours would go by. I don't know, like, I don't know about you, but, like, it's almost every day you could go down a wormhole and not even try.
Right, just, like, follow. I think... So I escaped New York. I went to my mom's in Westchester. I had my mom come pick me up and take me to her house. Because I was like, I'm not going to die on this island. Please don't get me. And she did, and that was great. And like, I was there for a couple months. But when I came back, I purposely stopped watching the news. Because I was like, I listened to the daily podcast every morning, and that was all that I did. Because sometimes they had stories that were like, whatever, but I like the news, especially because it was like, you had like COVID going on, you had all these like horrible like police shootings going on, you also had like political madness. It was like everything was awful, everything was terrifying. So I didn't watch. I only watched for several months. I only watched 90 Day Fiance.
Sounds amazing.
It was, honestly, best show on TV.
That's great. It's great to mentally be able to mentally get away like that, because every time you turn around between, your laptop, your tablet, your phone, you're constantly connected, and you don't really necessarily want to be. And that's great that you were able to get away, to kind of, Shawshank your redemption up to Westchester.
Yeah.
Now, given the distance, it's not, it's not that far, but you're certainly away from a lot of things. Were you able to still speak to your therapist? Were you still able to have like teletherapy during your time away?
Yeah, so I definitely still did. I've been doing teletherapy now since this madness started. So I definitely, it was weird doing therapy at my mom's though, because my mom has like no concept of like personal space or boundaries. So like I would be like doing therapy, she like come open the room, come in, sit down, and like stare at me, and I was like, "Can you what do you get out of here?" But I did keep doing it. I had a switch therapist. My therapist like quit in the middle of COVID.
What?
Right, and I was like, "Hey, you just diagnosed me with like a fear of abandonment. Is this a trick?" But because she was like, listen, I'm leaving this practice and I'm going to start my own practice, and like, we don't take your insurance. And I was like, okay, well, you know, how much is it? And she was like, $225. Like, okay, goodbye, good luck. Thank you, bye bye. So I had to get a new therapist, that process was crazy because therapists were in hot demand because everyone was like losing their freaking minds.
Yeah.
So, and then I got a new therapist, and I have a mental health team. I also now have a psychiatrist. I mean, I'm really like, I got a whole crew.
That's amazing though. That one, to go through what you went through on top of dealing what everybody else was going through, your stress level must have been through the roof.
Yeah, what happened? So I started having panic attacks, and I never had them before. I've always had anxiety, but I never had panic attacks. And I didn't know what they were. I thought I was having heart attacks. And here's the thing: like, you often don't have like several heart attacks in a row. It's not a thing that happens. But I did. I was like, oh. And if you Google like the symptoms of panic attack, like for me, it was like I felt really lightheaded. I could hear my heart like palpitating, and I was sweating. If you Google those things, it's like, for a woman, it's like you're having a heart attack. So you're already panicking, and you're like, oh, I'm panicking. Also, I'm going to die. Like, there's a pandemic. I can't just like go to the doctor. What do I do? So I like emailed my doctor, and I was like, hi, I think I've been having a heart attack this weekend. And they called me right away. They're like, hey, you need to come in. That's a serious thing. So I went in and I got an EKG, and I got like all these tests done, and it wasn't a heart attack. It was nothing physically wrong. It was panic attack. So they put me on medicine, and then I followed up with a psychiatrist. Yeah.
Wow.
Good times.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's quite the load. Now, if you don't mind me asking, what would be something that would trigger one of these panic attacks? Would it be something like just normal everyday things, or was it something just like massive happening?
I think it was just, I also during COVID also lost my job, got a new job. So I had that kind of period of like financial freaking out. And then I got my new job, which I'm still at, and it's great. But like, so there was that. And it was just like, I was kind of like carrying, I think, like this heavy load, and I'm anxious to begin with. So like any little thing would happen. Like someone would be like, I was doing a comedy show on a Friday night, and I was going to my boyfriend's and was going to do it from his apartment. And I was like stressed out about like the timing, like what time should I get there to set up, but like it was a very, very stupid, but then it just like overwhelmed me. Like the smallest little things just like threw me over because I was like carrying all this shit.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I
lost some weight though, man.
What's up? Excuse me?
I got to my goal weight though, so that was fun.
That's fantastic. You're finding that silver lining.
Right, exactly. When you can't eat for a month, it's like, hey, look at me, I'm down a size.
That's it. That's the new workout plan. Just be stressed, have panic attacks.
Right, just be nauseous for a month, and you will watch those pounds melt away.
Now, with your therapist that had left the practice, had you been seeing them for a while? Like, had you built up this rapport with them?
Yeah, so I've been in therapy for a couple of years. I started therapy because I was in a really shitty relationship, and it was all mind fuckery. So I started therapy then, and then got out of that relationship and had stayed in therapy, kind of like working on just like, anxiety, like other stuff since then. So we had a really good relationship and worked together for a while, but then I was, couldn't afford her anymore.
Yeah. And that's a lot too, is to get to that point where you're like, I need to speak to somebody. That's how it was for me. You feel like you're almost hitting rock bottom. At least for myself, I was hitting rock bottom, and having that feeling of like, I got to go talk to someone. Like, I don't know what's going on. What were your initial feelings getting into therapy for the first time?
So the reason I started therapy, this is totally true. I started therapy. It sounds wild to say, but this was 4 years ago, maybe.
Sure.
And I started. My boyfriend was cheating on me all the time and lying to me, and he was just the worst person in the world. I hope he dies. But my boyfriend at the time, and we had conversations like, so I had like caught him cheating on me, and he had been like, "You're just jealous, like you're just insecure because I'm like so good looking, and all these women want to date me, and like everyone looks at us and they're like, why is he with her? And like, you need to work on your shit. So I went to therapy and I was like, hi, what do I do? My boyfriend is so wonderful and every woman wants to steal him from me and it's making me insecure. Like, how do I deal with it? So like I went to therapy for that, and then through therapy and like through other things that happened with that relationship, I realized like, oh wait, actually this person is a nightmare and I need to get out of this. And then I did, but yeah, that was why I started.
Wow. I mean, that's the best thing that could have ever, I feel like that could have come out of that relationship.
Absolutely. And then, you know, he was so stupid, he didn't even realize that, like, if I went to therapy, eventually we would realize that he was full of shit.
Yeah. It's funny when dating someone drives you to that point of, like, I gotta go talk to somebody.
Right.
I think when relationships end, you know, it's a sad point for certain people, and others, it's just like, no, this is great. No, thank you. Thank you for being who you were, because now I'm a better person because of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like, also, I think I'm like so much better now. Like, I think I was really insecure and like let people treat me really badly. And now, like, I don't. Like, I still do. Like, I'm a little bit of a pushover sometimes, but it's like nothing like near that. And also, like, I have a boyfriend now, and he is like wonderful and kind and all of the good things. So, I mean, it's also like, I think a lot of that progress was from me like talking to somebody and figuring out, you know, why I was letting someone make me feel so bad about myself, fixing that, and then being like, oh, I deserve this. And then the people, like, I think you attract what you're putting out there. So then you're putting out like positivity, you're attracting positive people, and it's all, you know, like, things are just so different.
Yeah, that is so true that you said that. It's really the energy that you're putting out there. It really comes full circle. It's like this revolving globe of energy that's around you, like this like orb. And if you're a negative person, if you have these negative emotions and negative thoughts, that's all you're giving out into the world. So why is the universe gonna bring in something different? And right. That's like the hardest thing to sometimes realize, and that's such a great benefit of therapy, where somebody else, an outside point of view, someone that has no emotional connection to you whatsoever, that can say, hey, listen, do you realize how you're talking to yourself? Do you realize how you're acting? Because we can't see it. Right.
Yeah. We're so mean to ourselves sometimes. Like, I think my therapist was like, how would you talk to your best friend? Like, your best friend called you up and was like, this is how I'm feeling about myself. Like, what would you say? And I'd like, well, I would tell her, stop, you're awesome. And she's like, so say it to yourself. And it's like, it seems like so simple, but it's really hard.
Yeah. Changing your inner self-talk is one of the hardest things, at least for myself. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to accomplish, to overcome. I listened to a few podcasts, and one of them is called The School of Greatness by this guy, Lewis Howes. And one of the episodes I listened to, they said, would you ever let a complete stranger talk to you the way that you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
And once you hear something like that, it's like the light bulb goes off, and you're like, why am I my own worst enemy? Why am I bullying myself?
And it's also like, what kind of, like, in relationships, right? Like, if I hate myself and I'm acting like I hate myself, what kind of person wants to date someone like that? Obviously somebody who either hates themselves also, or is going to manipulate someone that feels so badly about themselves, right? Like, you're not going to meet like good people. Good people aren't attracted to people that are putting that energy out there. And then once you make that shift and you're like, I think I'm, you know, pretty good, and I'm like a good friend, and I've got a lot going for me, and I'm not accepting people treating me like garbage, the people you're going to attract are going to be people who are going to be like, hey, like, I want, you know, someone that because they also have a good self-worth about themselves, and like it's all, everything becomes different.
Yeah, everything becomes different. It's very wild that you say that, because over the summer I had wrote this, and mind you, I've been in therapy for 3 years.
Okay.
I started in January 2018. I hit rock bottom January 5th. Was in a therapist's office within like 7 to 10 days, so let's say like a week later. But it wasn't up until this summer where I wrote a letter. I got big into journaling over the pandemic, and it wasn't until like June or July I wrote this letter to myself, and I said, I love you, for the first time. I'd never said that to myself. And
that's awesome.
Thank you. And it's a very powerful moment, and I feel like when we can do that and accept ourselves for who we are, the mistakes that we made, but understand that there's always a chance to turn it around. That there's always a chance to make a difference. I literally met my girlfriend like 2 months later, but it was this constant journaling and talking about these feelings and switching that conversation, switching that inner dialogue that I have. Mm-hmm. And then I met the greatest person that, she's changing my life. She's the greatest person I've ever dated. She's absolutely amazing. And the
reason that you met someone so awesome was because you kind of like switched. You knew your worth, and you were like, "This is what I'm worth. I'm awesome. I deserve someone awesome." And then this awesome woman saw that in you and was attracted to you because, like, awesome people aren't attracted to losers. You know what I mean? Like, or people think they're losers or act like they're losers. Like, so, it's funny how it all ends up like working out. I remember when I was with the awful ex-boyfriend, I was always like, he was the worst, and I was always saying things like, "Well, if I don't do this, he's going to dump me, right? If I don't bend over backwards and do things that I don't want to do, but he'll leave." And I remember a therapist was like, so let him.
Yeah. Right?
Like, why do you want someone like that? And it's like, oh shit, and now like I'm in a relationship now where it's like, if my boyfriend does something that upsets me, I'm like, "Hey, you did this thing. It upset me." And he's almost always like, "Oh my God, like I didn't mean it that way," or like, here's what I was saying. It's almost always been a miscommunication, like, whatever. But he's like, "I won't do that again. I don't want to upset you." It's not, well, don't be upset or I'm out, right? It's like, it's just a whole different world.
Yeah. Now, when you went back to that period of meeting with your therapist and talking about this previous relationship, did you start to see like this immediate effect on your life, or was it like a slow and gradual process?
It was slow. So when I like left, I mean, I don't know, I'm not a therapist, but I think he had like a personality disorder, or still has. So it was like very tricky because he would still like reach out to me and like start fights with me, or like, just weird. Like, it was just weird.
It's so crazy that he was like that, because he is a perfect candidate for therapy. Like people that cause drama for no reason should be at the top of the list for getting a therapist. That's just my take. And you should want to change and be a better person. I feel like people are always evolving. And every day that you leave your house or leave your apartment, you want to be the best version of yourself. And if it takes, talking to a complete stranger once a week to do that, I think you have to do it.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, what's the point? Like, I think we're so focused on, like, being physically healthy, especially now, right? Because it's like, oh, wow, like, I need to take my vitamins, I need to exercise. Like, I don't want to get COVID, so I'm going to take care of myself and put myself in the best possible situation, to fight diseases or whatever until I can get my shot. But it's like, we also have to make sure our minds are in good spots, because, like, it doesn't matter how healthy you are on the outside if your inside's a mess.
Oh, yeah. I had written these articles about just finding vulnerability and what it meant to be vulnerable, especially, from a guy's perspective. And I made this reference about how I used to go to the gym and I would lift all these weights, and yet on the inside, my emotions were no stronger than like a Fabergé egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I get that.
It really is. It's like going to a therapist is like going to the gym. You have to just keep working out your emotions.
And it's like, for vulnerability, because like that's a big thing too. I listened to she has a podcast and wrote books, Brene Brown. I don't know if you know, but she's awesome, and she talks about vulnerability. And like, I really try to, like, we always think, and I think this is like a society thing, right? We think like being vulnerable is being weak, but it's not. Being vulnerable is being strong. And it's like, once you think that, you're like, oh, like, and that's like anything where you're like, like laying your cards on the table, like telling someone you love them, like all of those things, right? You're like, oh, if I do that, they'll know. And then, no, that's good. Like, we should all, be that strong. And like, that's a big thinking shift, or was for me at least.
Oh, yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned Brene Brown. It was recommended to me by my acting teacher to read Daring Greatly, because I had such an issue with being vulnerable and knowing how to access my emotions. Because again, like you had said, we're always taught that showing our emotions, you're showing weakness. Being vulnerable is such a weakness. And I remember as I finished that book, as I finished Daring Greatly, I was on the train. I was on an N train. We're pulling into Queensboro Plaza.
Okay.
As I'm reading the last 2 pages of this book, and I just feel the tears start welling up. The first time that I ever cried in public in New York City was on a train in one of the busiest train stations possible.
But that's when you became a real New Yorker too, right? Isn't that the thing? Like, you're not a real New Yorker till you cry on the subway.
I think that's what they say. If not, that's what we're going with. That's. But it was, it was just so funny because I remember looking up. I still had, I have tears in my eyes. I'm crying on the train. People are filling in, and they're looking at me, and they're going in opposite directions. Nobody wanted to sit next to me.
No.
It's
they're like, that guy's Looney Tunes.
Yeah. Like, I'm just
gonna try and sell you something.
Yeah, I'm like, just look at this book. Can you see this? Like, this is why these are tears of happiness now. But it's so funny how having that level of vulnerability is so key in the arts and what actors and musicians and comics do. And that was kind of why I wanted to start this podcast. Like,
yeah,
I think being in therapy adds a level of vulnerability to our art. Now, do you feel like being in therapy has helped enhance your comedy?
Yeah, because I test jokes on my therapist. She doesn't know, but I do. And I'm very, and when she laughs, I'm like, yes, got her. But I think, and there's also I feel like people have this thought that if you get well mentally, you won't be funny anymore. I think that people are afraid to go on, medicine or think oh, I'm going to lose my, and it's that's not what happens at all. It's very much true, right? The adage is time. What is it? It's something plus time equals comedy, right?
Tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Yes, tragedy plus time. Thank you. Yeah, so it's when you're in something, you don't it's not just time. You need the space to make it funny. And if you're still knee deep in that, you're not going to be able to find the funny out of it. You need to get out of that, be able to look at it, analyze it, and then you can find the funny. So I think therapy only helps, or medication, or whatever you need. I think all of that is only going to help.
Yeah. I think that's very true. Now, what's your stance on people, when I say people, what's your stance on comics that when they get on stage, they say, I don't need therapy, I have comedy?
Yeah, I'm against that. I'm
Nice.
I'm con. Because one, there's you pay your therapist. You know what I mean? So I'm happy to go to an open mic or a show and listen to your jokes, but that hole in your heart isn't going to get filled by us. And also we're laughing or not laughing, but we're not being so let's talk more, let's unpack that. We're not having a conversation. Yeah. And a lot of the cognitive behavioral therapy, is what I mostly do with my therapist, is unpacking feelings behind things and finding tools and solutions. And talking stuff out is helpful, but it's not everything. And also I hate that when people say that, because it's you'll be on a show and 8 people will say that, right? And you're okay, yeah, no. I mean, do comedy, but also, go to therapy. Do both. Make time for both. You got time, kids.
Yeah, I really feel like the two overlap. I feel like for myself, I think therapy was that skeleton key for me, for my stand-up. The deeper we dug in my therapy sessions, the easier it was for me to write about my jokes about my life. Yeah. I used to do a lot of observations, and now I do a lot more stories. I'll still work in observations, but the stories I was able to unlock them because of therapy. Right,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, if I make a joke about something, I have jokes about that awful ex-boyfriend, right? I can tell those jokes, maybe they get a laugh, maybe they don't, and that's cool. But doing that alone isn't what made me realize that I was picking the wrong kind of person, right? I didn't realize that by just telling jokes about the person. That took therapy.
Yeah, I like that you test jokes out on your therapist. I find that pretty fascinating.
I do. I had therapy today, and there was a couple of things I said, and when she laughs, I make notes of it. I'm not even kidding. I write down my phone. I'm got her.
I give you credit. I give you so much credit. I don't know if I could do that.
Oh, you should try. Listen, you're paying them. Get the most out of them.
Yeah. I had one instance where I told my therapist a joke, and I'd gone overseas. I went to London and Paris for 2 weeks to do stand-up and some sightseeing. And when I came back, she obviously had asked me, how the trip was. I said it was great. She asked how the stand-up was. I said, it was interesting. And she goes, how so? I go, well, out of all the jokes I did, my suicide jokes hit the hardest. And she puts her pen on the pad, leans in, and goes, oh, you have jokes about suicide.
Oh, no.
Why don't you tell them to me? So that was the first and only time I've really have ever told my therapist jokes. And the only reason why I did it was because in my mind, I go, if you don't tell her these fucking jokes, pal, she's going to have you committed. Like, you are going to have to go to a psych ward. And
you're going to walk out of here and there's going to be like a van and 3 guys in like jackets waiting for you.
Yeah, we have this nice custom fitted white jacket just for you. It's perfect.
Try this on. It feels backwards. Don't worry. That's how it's supposed to fit. Oh,
right?
I did learn this. Therapists don't like jokes on killing yourself because I think it means they have to do like paperwork on you or something.
Yeah.
I had a joke, which it was a tweet, and I was testing on my therapist, and I was like, yeah, Shakespeare wrote King Lear in quarantine, and all I've written are jokes about killing myself. And my therapist, she's like, so you want to kill you? And I was like, no, God, no, I don't really want to kill myself.
Right.
So then I changed it up because I was like, that one doesn't work. Thank you so much.
Right. Oh, that's great. Who would ever thought that having a therapist would be like your greatest writing partner?
Anytime that she's like starts like getting paperwork to fill out, I'm like, okay, wait, I have to. No, that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
Move on.
Now, all right. So that being said, how open are you with your therapist? I mean, do you still at this point find do you hide stuff from them, or are you an open book when you go into that therapist session?
So I am now an open book. When I first started with the other therapist during that relationship time, because it took me a few times to really get out of that relationship. And one time I ended it and then got sucked back in. And then I lied to my therapist about it. I was like getting back together with this horrible man, and I lied to her about it. And, eventually I came clean and everything was okay. But, when we talked about that, we did like we talked about it afterwards. And it was like, why, like, if you're lying to me, you're just doing a disservice to yourself, right? Like, you're just not fully getting what you want to get out of this. And so I've kind of remembered in my mind, like, if I have to lie to my therapist about something, it's something I know I shouldn't be doing. And I'm just wasting my time and my money, because basically it's going to take 4 sessions to come clean about something where if I told her right off the bat, we would figure it out, right? So I make sure not to lie. And if I have an inkling to lie, I know that that's a problem. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's amazing that you can recognize that now. I think that's huge, because I think having this teletherapy world now, I think it's easier to be more open with.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And it's also like, one thing I like is like, you don't have to like get back on the train after therapy when you're like still teary-eyed and deal with it. You're home, right? So it's like, let's just do this. And then I'm in my own space, and like, sometimes after therapy, if you want to like work out or shower or like do whatever you want to do to like kind of like, feel like good about whatever feelings get stirred up, like you have your own space to do it. And I think that does help people be more open too.
Yeah. I think that's very true. Now, are you more of a session crier, or do you cry post-therapy?
So but today I had therapist, and my therapist was like, are you crying? And I was like, no, my contact has been wonky all day. Like, I don't, like, I'm like, listen, I'm not like, if I cry, I'll tell you. But like, yeah, I don't usually cry during therapy sessions. I will occasionally if we're talking about like something that's like really upsetting or whatever, but I usually don't. But usually after, and I don't really cry after, but usually after there is like some self-reflection, and like I find that if I like shower and like I kind of just feel so much better. I don't know why I feel it. It's just like kind of like taking your own time and like letting it like kind of, because my big thing is like I don't like to feel feelings. I'm like, woo, I hate this. Let's go do something. So I try to like feel feelings and like take some time and whatever.
Okay. I can respect that. I can respect that. In the shower, it's very therapeutic. It's like it's the warm water, it's the steam, it's the just cleansing. I think it's the cleansing factor of it all. And you're washing. You're essentially washing away the emotions.
And I also sometimes will I'll often think of like a comeback to a fight I had with someone like 4 years ago. I'll be like, I got him. Where I do my best work, I guess.
It's funny that you say that, because it's when you're in therapy and you're getting help, situations that you weren't able to overcome years prior or even months prior, they come back to you. And it's just so much more clear cut now as your course of action. For myself, I would see the person, and it's just the two of us. It's just us in a room, and literally I don't say anything. It's just I wave goodbye to them. I wave goodbye, and that has proven to be the best thing, because I get very attached to previous conversations sometimes, and it's like that, shoulda, coulda, woulda thinking, and it's hard, and it was just so hard for me to overcome that. So the fact that you can have that moment of reflection and have that comeback, and then that's it, and it's done with, I think that's huge. I wouldn't say I'm jealous, but I'm very proud that you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm proud of it too, and it took a long time. Like I had like a friendship I had to end, and it was the good person, just not a good person for me, kind of like brought out the worst in me or whatever. So I ended that friendship, and I never really kind of like ghosted on a friend, I guess, right? And I never really said anything because I don't like confrontations, I don't like whatever. But now I've kind of like verbalize it myself. Like, I haven't had conversations with this person, but it's just basically like, as like the me that I want to be doesn't have room for the person that you are. And like, that's in my mind, like that's the end of it. It's like, that's that. And it's like, when you finally realize it, you're like, yeah, this is why, right? Because like this person, again, not a bad person, but like they were infringing on me bettering myself and getting to where I want to be and being who I want to be and my best version of myself. So like, that's a person that's not for me.
Yeah. I don't think I could have said that any better. I think that is one of the best things I've heard, I should say, in all these interviews.
Really?
Yeah, I think that.
What do I win?
Yeah. Well, you win my admiration. But I think as we get older, friendships are tough to end. I think they're very tough to end, and with all the dating apps that are out there and with all the people that are out there in the world, I think our view on meeting someone romantically is, I think it's easier for us to move on in that aspect than it is to move on with a friendship, because your lives get so wrapped up in what you're doing that making friends sometimes takes a back seat to finding a partner. Finding your partner in crime, finding your space in the comedy world or the corporate world or whatever you're doing.
Right.
So ending a friendship, I think it's very tough, but that's the best thing that I've heard is, I don't have room for the person that I'm becoming. I don't have room for the person that you are. And that's right, and it's huge.
I think in comedy especially, because like you meet so many comics, and we all have this one big thing in common. So we bond really quickly with a lot of people over this one thing. Like, we want to be funny, and we're like, doing these same shows, doing these same mics, knowing all these people, and you bond really quick with people. But sometimes those people, like, that's all you have. That's it. We just have this comedy connection, and we can't take this friendship to like another level, and that's fine. But then you also are, sometimes you're lucky and you meet people, and I've been really lucky. I have a few great friends that I've met through comedy that like we bond on a lot of levels, so it's like, but it's telling the difference and being like, some people are, cool for this, and then some people are like friends for life. And it's just like, but I think when you're young, you want everyone to be a friend for life. And then as you get older, you're like, I don't have time. I've got 4 spots to fill. You guys are all acquaintances.
That's it.
Thank you.
That's it. It's like you're trying to fill out a roster of a basketball team. You're like, I got 5 starters. I got 1 6-man. I got room for 6 people. Now, what do you bring to the tryouts? What are you doing for me?
You're tall. We got room for you. All right, who's next?
Yeah, right? That's great. That's great. I really like that. I like that thinking. I think it's very cool, and I think it really helps people. I think it'll help people move along in their life. I think that's huge. Now, in terms of just reflecting on your journey through therapy, what's something that you would say to yourself? What's advice that you might give your younger self about therapy now? Let's say you were talking to Kristin 10 years ago, pre-therapy Kristin. What's something you would tell her if she was debating on getting into therapy?
I would say it can't hurt. You know, it definitely won't. No one's ever like come out of therapy and been like, man, I'm worse now. Woo! You know, like Ted Bundy wasn't like, listen, I was fine. And then I started going to therapy and then I was like, I have to kill women. You know, that's not how it goes. So it can't hurt. I also think a lot of it is just, it's growing up. Like, I think everyone's a mess until they hit 30. And then when you're in your 30s or when you hit 30, like start that introspection and it kind of stuff like figures itself out. Like I've always been to be a little bit insecure. I mean, I do stand-up comedy, right? Like we all need something. That's why we're doing it. But like, if I look at myself now, as opposed to myself when I was like in my early 20s, like I was so insecure and I was so wrapped up in like not thinking I was good enough. And it just wastes so much time. Yeah. So I think if you're young, if you're in your 20s, like it's a good time to start going to therapy because it's just gonna help you get to these realizations, I think, sooner.
I think that's very accurate, very, very accurate, and thank you for saying that because I'm a big believer in once you hit that 30-year mark, once you put in 30 years on this earth, especially now, it's only getting tougher. It's only getting crazier, and you have to realize that once you get to this point that, you know, you got to work on yourself. You have to. Yeah. It's the only way to survive.
And I think it also gets easier. Like, I think after you're 30, like every year you just like, you care a little bit less about what other people think of you. Yeah. Like you just, you know, and then I think like by the time you're like, I don't know, 40, 50, you're going to be like my grandma, oh my God, she had no fucks. She would like cut in lines and stuff. I remember we went to Disney World and she cut the line. She's like, I don't give a shit. I'm 80. You know what I mean? Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
You just get there gradually. So if you think if you do both things in tandem, you're setting yourself up for success.
That's it, baby. That's it. That's what. Listen, if anybody that's listening is scared of getting older, just wait till you're 80 so you can cut the line. That's it.
Right. And then they're like, what do you do? And she used to like. I tell you, she used to steal from like CVS, like put stuff in her pockets. And you're like, what are they gonna do? Arrest me? I'm 80 years old. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, sure. What are you gonna arrest an 80-year-old woman because she has a Butterfinger in her coat pocket? Come on. That's
amazing. Right? Oh my God, I want to be best friends with your grandmother. Steal me some fucking Reese's. That's it. That's it. Now, next time you talk to her, can you tell her to grab me some Reese's peanut butter cups?
I will. I will definitely relay the message.
That's great. Thank you. Well, Kristin, I want to acknowledge you for a moment and really thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on today, for talking about your journey with mental health and for getting help when you needed it most and to continue that path. I think being in therapy is monumental. I think it's the best gift you can give yourself, and I want to just applaud you for all your efforts and especially for coming on today. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, thank you so much, and thank you. This is great, and I think what you're doing is awesome, and like helping everybody get their asses into therapy will only be good for the world. So I applaud you and all that you're doing as well.
Thank you so much, Kristin. I appreciate it. Right. You have yourself a great day now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to join us on this mental health journey. My name is Ralph Anthony, and this has been another episode of Unmasking the Mic. We'll be back next week with a brand new interview. Until then, stay present, stay in the moment, and keep your head up.